Joe Pasillo.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo. As always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, we are going into the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room is open, so you can join us in there at the crusadechannel.com/chat. And keep in mind, Joe, right now, we've been saying all along on our social media, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on a number of other sites. We now also go live on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock on Rumble. And we're going to build up our Rumble audience over there, so eventually we're going to ditch Facebook and YouTube, okay? Which would ultimately be the goal, Joe Resinello. But in the meantime, we love being at the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. If you want to support us with a few bucks, you could go to patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Drop in a couple bucks on a monthly basis if you like, and keep this little enterprise going. In the meantime, as all of you know, what Joe and I try to do, we're working men. We're working men just like you. We have families, we have bills, we have everything else. We got to put food on the table, so we get up and go to work. So what we do is we dedicate our Sunday nights and our Monday afternoons to my church and the Crusade channel because what we do is we look over the last week and we look at some stories that we think that we want to cover, we want to talk about in our own North Jersey style. All right, we have PhDs in common sense, and this is all kitchen table politics, culture, and religion, okay? We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight. The story of the week, hands down, is Cuba. Joe and I want to talk about it. Joe grew up with a lot of Cuban guys in Newark, in North Arlington, and so did I, okay, in Newark. And the fact is, we knew our friends' parents. Guess who our friends' parents fled when they came to the United States? Castro's Cuba. Not Batista's Cuba, not before then, Castro's Cuba, and the oppression that was going on there. And that's what's been going on for 62 years. And we're going to talk about that and what's going on in Cuba. But moreover, we have to talk about what's going on with the American left that wants to seem to attribute this organic revolution is what it is. A peaceful one at that, because these people are getting shot and they don't own guns. So it's a peaceful revolution. And the American left is coming up with every reason for why they're protesting, other than the main reason, the true reason, is they're tired of the brutal communist regime of the Castro brothers. And it is the Castro brothers. Fidel Castro might be dead, but that dude still runs Cuba through his brother. His brother might not be in office, but he's running it through this other guy, Diaz-Canel. Okay? And the Cuban people are finally getting tired of it. Takes a while sometimes before you throw off the yoke of oppression. The American Revolution was the same way. For years, the British Crown was imposing taxes on the Americans, okay, or the British settlers in America and on the colonies, okay. We know this from our history for decades until finally they stood up and said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And we had a war, and the colonies obviously became the United States of America. And so it takes time, but having said that, now after 62 years of a brutal communist dictatorship, the people are stepping up. With that, I hand it over to Joe Resinello.
And as Joe said, obviously Cuba's been in the news all week. I just want to give you a little intro as far as what has taken place. Pay particular attention to when I read quotes from Diaz-Canel, who is the stand-in, I guess, I don't even know what you call him,
I guess you could call
president.
See, president implies democracy, elections. We'll talk about that. Yeah,
but he's the guy in charge. He was put there in charge by Castro. So just to give you a little...
Remember the dude from the movie Train Spotting when he says, with the Scottish accent, and he says, "You're the dude in the chair." Yeah, Diaz-Canel. He's the dude in the chair.
So let's just get a little background. Thousands of Cubans in at least 16 cities took to the streets peacefully to demand an end to 62 years of a communist regime, chanting freedom, wearing American flags, and in many cases facing extreme political repression. Videos that were being shown across the island show that basically you had security officers attacking peaceful protesters. In Havana, bystanders recorded the sounds of gunfire, public beatings of dissidents, and now this is what Manuel Diaz-Canel, Miguel, the president appointed by Raul Castro, this is some of the things he had to say. He's calling for street combat. These are his words, not mine, against anyone demanding an end to the regime in a speech. Canal appeared on television to call all communists to violently attack any protester, effectively urging civil war. We will, this is his words, not mine, we are willing to give our lives. They will have to pass over our corpses if they want to confront the revolution. Canal warned. We are willing to do anything. We are convening all revolutionary communists to go out to the streets where these provocations are happening and confront them with firmness, he commanded. The order of combat is issued, revolutionaries to the street. Now, my first comment, and just to kind of, touch on some of this, notice he's using the word communists. We are convening all revolutionary communists. That's his words, not mine. I'm quoting directly from the president of Cuba. Why can't the Biden regime use the word communist? They refuse to use the word communist.
Because, Joe, look.
No, but I just he does it.
Right,
He
calls it communist because that's what they are. Let's get it straight. See, conservatives have known this for decades about the American left, okay? The American left, they consider Fidel Castro a darling. We should be more like Cuba, is what people like Oliver Stone used to say. I think, I heard he changed his tune a little bit lately, but I didn't want to read too much about him. But in the meantime, in the past, it's, we should look more like Cuba. We should have a healthcare system like this. They have a 90% literacy rate, to which I've always said, what's the sense in being able to read if the only thing the government allows you to read is Karl Marx and the life of Che Guevara, okay? Just being able to read is not enough. Having the freedom to read what you want. Do they have the same freedom to read the Bible in Cuba? I wonder. But this is what we've always been told. That's why, see, Biden is in a position where he was put there by the left, and now he can't say anything. The old Joe Biden, not a moderate, he never was a moderate, but the old Joe Biden might have used the word communism. This Joe Biden, this iteration of Joe Biden, can never use the word communist. You want to know why? Because it was the left that put him in power, with all their rioting and everything else, and a bunch of other things that we can't mention on Facebook and YouTube, but all you good people at Crusade Channel know what we're talking about, okay? So the thing is, we know exactly why they won't use the word communist, and nobody calls out Biden. In fact, Peter Doocy on Fox, he actually put the screws to Jen Psaki and said, "Are you going to call them communist?" And she skirted it. She didn't answer. Oh, they're oppressive. They're communists. But also, their oppression stems from the fact that they're communists.
But also, how about the human rights violations? I mean, listen, this is not like me being biased. It's undisputable. Cuba, for 62 years, it's human rights violation after human right violation. I have not heard, that's another thing I have not heard from the Biden regime. One comment. They say, well, they're not governing properly. It's mismanagement. It's too oppressive. The dictatorship has a little bit of the government has too much of a heavy hand. No, it's called human rights violations. Sorry, guys. They have not said one thing about that. Zero. And frankly, I think that's very telling. Mm-hmm. It's very telling Listen, you could have a difference of opinion. Clearly, Obama and, say, Trump had a difference of opinion with regard to how to handle Cuba. Clearly, I didn't agree with Obama's view. Frankly, you don't do business with frigging bad people like that. You just don't. You're not building bridges. You're aiding and abetting them. That's the idea when you have an embargo. You basically are saying, we're going to make your life difficult.
Can you imagine if somebody recommended we start doing that with China? But never happened in America.
But the point is, putting that aside, the fact that they have basically tortured people.
Joe, 80, 90 people have disappeared over the last week.
That's my point.
The gunshots are not coming from the people that are holding the American flags. The gunshots are coming from the military. Because this idiot Canel told them that, just what Joe said, go out, communists, out into the street. Out into the street. Another interesting thing, too, I noticed, because he said this. When you do that, obviously, you're demonizing the people of Cuba. Those who, let's say, disagree with your regime. They don't want communism anymore. Joe Resinello, I'm just asking. I'm not trying to cause trouble. Well, maybe I am trying to cause trouble. Does it seem like there's a little bit of a parallel between the way this guy's talking and going back 4 years to Hillary Clinton, calling half this country deplorable? Fast forward to 2020, when they allowed our communist revolutionaries, BLM and Antifa, to burn cities down, to blow up businesses, black-owned businesses too, in the inner city. In other words, demonizing those people that wanted the government to say, no, you need to shut down Antifa. You need to shut down Black Lives Matter. Does it strike you that there's a parallel there, Joe? Because, again, I know I could say, and Joe Resinello could say, we know in the last 4 years, from Hillary Clinton till now, what it feels like to be demonized by your government. They still call us white supremacists. Because we say, if Trump ran again, I'd vote for him again. I did vote for him in 2020. They call us white supremacists. They call us haters. They call us all that. Don't they do the same thing, Joe Resinello?
Well, I wanted to just throw a different spin with regard to Biden. You know, they've come up with every excuse other than calling them communists, other than calling out their human rights violations. One of which is they're saying it's this uprising is due to COVID numbers, cases. This was stated by Psaki. I mean, one could potentially say that they're doing this because clearly, as I just said before Joe was speaking, about how they're trying to normalize, Cuba. Obama, that was one of his positions. He tried to basically normalize a policy towards Cuba. We all know that. And Biden's attached to it. So maybe they feel that they can't aggressively speak to it, but everyone knows what's going on. As Joe said, they're waving the American flag. They're screaming freedom. You know, this is something else that I find to be striking. In our own country, we're giving our freedom up.
Yeah.
People are making disparaging comments about the flag. And yet, here you have a country that's gone through 62 years of repression. A friend of mine that I worked with 3 years ago went to Cuba on a cruise. He spent a day there. He told me it is a dump. Straight up and down.
Real quick, Joe. Marco Rubio gave a speech this week in the Senate, okay? And I haven't been the biggest fan of Marco Rubio over the years, but he was spot on. He said, what's the sense in building multi-million-dollar hotels, for the tourists? Okay, so I guess with Obama, the tourism industry opened back up for Cuba. What's the sense in building multi-million-dollar hotels if the people are living in shacks where the roof is falling down on their head? In other words, what's going on here, Joe? You know what? And by the way, this is a combination of some right-wing interests, too. Business interests that want to get into Cuba. Again, we're not exonerating them because, they'll take any system where they make most of the money. So don't think this is a a right-wing, left-wing thing. It is in regards to the fact that we're talking about communists, but we're also talking about their oligarch facilitators. Those who want to create two classes. One that controls everything and one that is controlled. And that's what we know. We said that a million times at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. We see the models in America, in American cities, Detroit and San Francisco, where forget about Detroit, San Francisco, where they're super duper wealthy, and then there's everybody else defecating in the street. And that's the model that they want for America. Get it through your head. The last thing they want is Cuba to reestablish civil institutions, to have a real open and honest election, because those people would tell Canel and Castro and the rest of them to kick rocks. Get out of here. We don't want you anymore.
My friend George told me that there's a part of the island that's off limits to not only tourists, but the people of Cuba, and that's where the leadership of Cuba lives. It's like basically like a road to nowhere.
Like a big gated community with guards.
Isn't it typical? We've said this time and time again on so many shows, and I've actually got into it a little bit on social media myself this week after reading a lot of what was going on in Cuba. You cannot legislate equality, monetary equality. It doesn't work.
Never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. I'm telling you this right now. It's been tried and it's been failed, and that's sort of what the Biden regime is trying to do with some of their policies. You will never legislate equality. I'm going to tell you, the only way you will have equality is when man sees God in his fellow man. That's when people will treat others well.
But Joe, I agree with you. But remember, but also, and I know you know this, all right? I'm not clarifying what you said. I agree with you, okay? But the difference is, at the outcome, there's never going to be equality. We are all called to treat each other with equal dignity. That goes without saying. But the results are never going to be the same. I had this conversation the other day with my wife, right? And we were talking, okay? And she asked me about that. This very thing that we're talking about right now. I said, you can't have an equality of outcome, because at the end of the day, an equality of outcome is going to be necessarily unjust, because people make different decisions in life. I worked the job I worked. When I was 20, I would have never thought I would. I made piss poor decisions, and that was a job I had to get 15 years ago, and thank God I got one. But my point is, I'm not equal to monetarily, financially. I'm not equal to the doctor. I'm not equal to the lawyer. They made sacrifices that I did not. However, what Joe says is exactly spot on. You still have a functioning, orderly society, okay, that benefits the common good, regardless of what the person, let's say, for argument's sake, does for a living.
Well, no, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But equality of dignity is what I.
But also, no one will starve. Is my point.
Nobody should starve.
No one will be on the street. I mean, Father Louis Leonelli, who basically inspired us to start this show, he ran a shelter in the Bronx, and he basically said, if all people who believed in Jesus Christ, and it's probably 3 out of 4 in America, if you include Protestant denominations with Catholic, with the Catholic Church, at least 3 out of 4 believe that Jesus Christ believed. They, in one way, we're not getting into like Thomas Aquinas theology, but I'm saying like they'll acknowledge Christ. My point is, if people believed in Christ and took the 2 commandments seriously, no one would be hungry. No one would be on the street. People would help one another. They would share. That doesn't mean that I then live in a box. That doesn't mean that I then can't take care of my family. No one ever went poor sharing. I'm going to tell you that right now. No one ever did. But people don't, because they don't see God in their fellow man. If people did, everybody, we're not talking about a select few, and I'm also not talking about giving everything away, because you're not called to. If you're married and you have a family, you have to take care of them, you have to educate them, you have to provide for them. That's part of it. But what I'm talking about is sharing. And that isn't communism. That's Christianity. And here's another thing. I've said this many times and I've taught it. Read the compendium of the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, the compendium. Really, in it, no one is really supposed to be rich. I'm telling you this right now. Read it. You're supposed to provide for your needs. That means if I buy a $150,000 car, why did I do that? I could buy a $40,000 car and it could last 15 years. Why did I spend all that money? To show off? Oh, look at me. I'm such a rich guy.
Well, you just pissed off a lot of right-wingers right now.
Too
because
bad.
That's American. But that's part of
my
Americanism.
Point is I'm talking about Catholicism.
Well, no, I agree 1,000%. And if you're talking about just even the Christian impulse in general, to let's say, yes, I'm with you on that. The church, and this is one of the reasons why, by the way, the American Catholic Church came under attack in the 1950s and the 1960s by both the left and the right. The elites on the left and the right. The church teaches, for the left, it's probably sexual morality. And for the right, it's the church's teaching, as you said, in the social compendium. The church, under no uncertain terms, does not condemn the free market economic system. The church condemns consumerism. greed, because greed is a mortal sin. Last time I checked, all you evangelical Christians out there, okay, remember, greed is a sin. The church teaches that what you need for your family, their education, their well-being, and everything else, and those things that are within your prudential judgment, and then above that, everything is for the poor. That's what, now I know a lot of people don't like that.
The church has taught that forever.
But the difference is, the Anculters of the world, okay, yes, I'm going to be critical of some right-wingers. The Anculters of the world, the Sean Hannitys of the world, have said, no, we don't agree with that. Good, okay, fine. We don't agree with that. But if you think that it's okay, in other words, that you've amassed $150, $200 million fortune, okay, and you're not going to do jack for the poor, I would refer you to the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And I'm not going to get into it, but I would say to you, go ahead and read that and see what Christ thinks about that. Don't look to Joe and I. See what Christ thinks about when you have. See, here's the rule. Like Marx had his rules, right? From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, yada, 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 yada. Okay, Christ has a really simple one too, which is more just. From to whom much is given, much more is expected.
And that's in the gospel.
And that's a gospel statement. And you want to know, that doesn't mean, like Joe said, you live in a box.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, and then that also, by the way, Joe, I'm just going to cut you up just for 1 second. And that also doesn't mean that Christ, let's say, begrudges you a very nice car, let's say, or home. That's not what he's talking. What he's talking about is you still have been given much, and you need to give much. And to me, that's what that is infinitely more valuable than any friggin' political slogan you could come up with.
But because again, it comes down to, do you see God in your neighbor?
Let's leave it there for a second. We're going to take a break on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. You're listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and we are already way in the breach. Remember, go to crusadechannel.com. Listen free so that you become a subscriber. Listen free. Go to the site, click that, listen free. You hear Joe and I, Mike Church, Rick Barrett, Dave Simpson, Brother Andre Marie, now Kennedy Hall. So it's a great station. We would encourage you all to become subscribers. Joe and I are, and we would encourage you to be. And remember, follow us across social media. Go find us on Rumble, all right? Because we are now on Rumble also. Stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, way in the breach, talking about Cuba. Go ahead, Joe. I cut you off.
No, it's all right. Let's just talk policy. I mean, obviously, Trump and Obama had a difference in policy with regard to how one should treat Cuba. During Trump's office, we're talking in 2019, there were fewer political arrests than when Obama was in office. Particularly in 2019, there were only 3,100 documented detentions. Sounds like a large number, but that was lower than the Obama years with regard to policy. I think that's worth noting. But also what's worth noting is the Hollywood celebrities who basically have hobnobbed and vacationed in Cuba, promoted movies in communist Cuba. I think we should note that.
I want to refer back to something you said earlier about the part of the island that the communist regime and the higher ups, they all live in. Remember, when the Hollywood types go to Cuba, they don't go visit people in the hovels in Havana, okay, and other places. They go to that gated community where they drink Grey Goose and eat foie gras. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, some of those people, Jay-Z, Beyonce, you got Katy Perry, Steven Spielberg, Mick Jagger, Ludacris and Usher, Conan O'Brien, which actually shocked me a little bit.
It does kind of shock me a little bit.
Sean Penn, Kevin Costner, Robert Redford, Danny Glover, Harry Belafonte, Oliver Stone.
Well, Harry Belafonte's always been a socialist, so it's not a shock from him. Harry Belafonte is an old, crusty socialist. By the way, he's black, so I'm sure somebody out there, if they hear this, they're gonna call Joe and I racist because I'm criticizing a black guy. No, Harry Belafonte is an old, crusty socialist. That's what he is. Oliver Stone, same thing, okay? Oliver Stone has excused the Castro regime for years. Same with Michael Moore, okay? We should have a healthcare system like theirs. No, I don't want a healthcare system like theirs, Michael. I want our healthcare system. How about I want people like you to get your nose out of our healthcare system and let me pay for insurance? Now, that's a whole different story, okay? But nonetheless, like I said, my thing when I included this in the story, Joe, about the celebrities was they go to that part of the island. They go to the exclusive part of the island. They're not eating what do they call? They're not eating rice and beans with the rest of the population. Okay, they're not. They're staying at one of those 5-star hotels on the Havana coast. Okay, they're not in the inner city. All right, with the grandmothers, with their kids and their grandkids eating rice and beans that Diaz-Canel, generously gives to them so that they won't starve.
But with regard to that, and Joe alluded to it, listen to Rubio's speech that he gave. I actually posted it on my Facebook page. Basically, what he said is when you're normalizing spending of their money in their country, the government controls the flow of money. You see, Rubio went into great detail of how that works.
They exchange, according to him, the dollars. Like if I'm a Cuban who came here from there, and I still have family there who haven't been able to escape, and I send them dollars, the government confiscates those dollars and gives them the worthless currency that they have, or I guess credits for buying some food or something. And who keeps the dollars? The government.
So basically, again, the reason why there's an embargo, again, we could debate policy, but they're destroying their own people. Why should we help that government to continue with that policy? It's very sad what's going on there, but you don't contribute to thievery. And that's what's going on in Cuba.
It's funny you're saying that.
They're stealing from their own people.
Because that's what communists do. Patrisse Cullors founded Black Lives Matter. She grifted tens of millions of dollars from that organization. She now owns 4 multi-million-dollar properties. That's what communists do. They take the money, then they skim as much as they could off the top, and they throw everybody else crumbs. No. Why is it that we have to keep repeating this over and over again, and we let the left frame the debate?
You know what's hysterical about that is that corporate America gave that woman $100 million.
Shame on them.
$100 million. We covered it on our show. She just bought a $1.4 million house in Malibu. And that was, as Joe said, one of a number of homes that she recently bought. That woman is a self-proclaimed communist.
Right.
Is she equal with everybody else? She's not equal with me. I don't own a $1.4 million home in Malibu. I find that to be hysterical, that companies gave her millions of dollars to save face to this ridiculous, woke craziness, and she has purchased all those homes on their dime. It makes me laugh.
Right. But it shows again what they're all about. Why would anybody enter into a debate with a Nazi? I wouldn't. Joe wouldn't. We would just turn around rightfully and say, no, first of all, the Nazis are socialists, so I don't know how they ever ended up, on the political right. That's one thing I don't know with conservatives allowed to happen. Nazis are on the political left. Leaving that aside, I don't have to argue with a Nazi. All I need to do is look at the bad fruit of their regime, which is millions of dead people and a world war that cost about the lives of how many tens of millions of people, okay, that they started, all right, no question about that. When they invaded Poland, they started World War II. So, and they caused all this problem. I don't need to argue with a Nazi. And in the same way, I don't know why we argue with communists. There is no argument with communists. You're supporting a murderous, barbaric, dictatorial system of government. We are unequivocally against it. Economically, politically, certainly religiously, because they're all atheists, okay? We reject it, and I don't want to argue with you. And by the way, if you want to be a professor in an American college, you're not going to get a job at an American college if you're a communist. Why are we afraid to do this to these people? They support murderous regimes, and we have to what? We have to defend our position? Rather than have them defend their position? If you defend Diaz-Canel and the Castro brothers and what they've done to these people for 62 years, shame on you, but I'm not going to argue with you. The answer is no. That's what Joe and I say. The answer is no.
But also, obviously the spin went on all week. MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell.
Another winner, Joe. Another winner.
He makes me itch. He argued.
There's a lot of people that make you itch, I noticed.
But
I'm with you on Larry O'Donnell.
This is what he had to say. He said, Cuba's problem is not too much socialism. Rather, It's that the country is too dictatorial and the dictators who have run the country are economically illiterate.
See, why do we let him get away with
But
this?
this is
Why?
Why? Honestly, that's again, it's such like a talking point.
But here's my problem. This is a personal thing, okay? For all you people out there at the front listening to us on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, I'm going to take this as a personal thing. This guy, Lawrence O'Donnell, actually tries to pretend that he's smarter than the rest of us. He makes it seem like guys like us, let's say, who voted for Donald Trump, or who, let's phrase it a little differently, people like us who don't want to vote for the Democrats, regardless of who's voting on the right. Okay? In other words, who don't want to vote Democrat. Somehow there's something wrong with us. They're economically illiterate. No, Mr. O'Donnell. These are guys who know exactly what they're doing. They confiscate the means of production. They control the money, like Joe Resinello just alluded to.
Food.
And they control the food. They control the military. And no, they're very economically literate. They know there's a big pot of money, and they want most of it for themselves. And that's the system that they impose. And that's called socialism, Mr. O'Donnell. You cannot have inequality of outcome in a socialist system. It can't work because ultimately there needs to be some government authority that controls the flow of, what would you call it, resources, of national income. If you're going to redistribute wealth, somebody's got to redistribute it. That guy or that small group of people, they are the ones who have all the power in that system. And power corrupts. You probably learned that in the Ivy League when you were there, but that's an old saying. I think it was Lord Acton. I think. I could be wrong. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. These people have absolute power, and they are corrupted. That's why socialism could never work. That's why it can't work. Not too much dictatorial power. It's too much socialism.
Well, let's talk China, because they had some strong words this week as well. Basically, the Chinese foreign minister claimed that the United States was single-handedly responsible for all the woes that the Cuban people suffer under communism, and asserted Beijing's stands ready to work with Cuba, presumably to suppress the nationwide protests. The foreign minister's name is Zhao Yizhen, and he stated that China firmly opposes foreign intervention in Cuba's internal affairs, firmly supports what Cuba has done in fighting COVID-19.
Goes that COVID again.
Improving people's livelihood and upholding social stability. I don't know what you're talking about, Mr.
A lot of social stability this week.
And firmly supports Cuba in exploring a developmental path suited for its national conditions, whatever that means. Zhao also took the opportunity to condemn the government of the United States, which has played no role in the protests, and this is what he said, and these are his words. As the Cuban side pointed out, the U.S. embargo is the root cause of Cuba's shortage of medicines and energy. Zhao falsely claimed the U.S. should lift all of their embargo policies and play a positive role in helping the Cuban people overcome the effect of the epidemic.
Here's my answer to Mr. Zhao. Okay, I'll tell you what. We're going to lift the embargo. The United Nations, a useless organization, by the way, however, challenge them. The UN has to go in there and they have to institute a free and fair election with people that do not have any fear of retribution from the government. Okay? None whatsoever. And people are able to run and campaign. They have access to social media, which, by the way, the Cuban government shut down this week. Okay?
Of course.
All right? They shut down social media and the internet because they don't want people communicating. That's a whole other conversation, okay? But that's what they did. They took away people's right to actually communicate their ideas to one another. Let's have an open, free, and fair election, and let's see if socialism lasts one day longer after the election is over. Now, the answer would be no, of course, because why, Mr. Zhao? The people in the street, Mr. Zhao, they're holding American flags, not China flags, not Chinese flags, okay? Not hammer and sickle, okay? Then that's not what they're waving. They're waving the American flag. Okay, so you know what they're telling you, Mr. Communist Chinese? Kick rocks. That's what they're telling you. You're such a liar, but that's what the communist regime does in China. The Communist Chinese Party lies like a rug. That's all they do is lie. Rubio said it best. You blame America for everything. Joe Resinello just pointed out the embargo's only going to make the thugs richer. If the lifting of the embargo, I should say. Okay? It's only going to make them richer, and it's going to oppress the people more. Lifting the embargo won't do a damn thing. Not a damn thing. These people need political freedom, and that regime needs to allow for elections. And if it takes foreign interference, particularly from the UN, last time I checked, Cuba's a member of the UN, okay? then they're going to have to allow an open and fair election. And then let's see what happens.
That'll never happen. Eventually, though, I mean, it's 62 years. It just goes to show you, you can only put people down for so long. This is why regimes don't last. Cuba will not last 100 years. I will guarantee that.
Joe, they might not last another 100 days.
That's my point. They will not last. They don't last. Do you know that the Soviet Union, I mean, you all do know this, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. I mean, they were a world power. When I was a kid, I mean, everyone was afraid of the Soviet Union in the 80s. All talk. They didn't even last 100 years. They didn't even make the whole decade of the 20th century. I mean, it doesn't work. That's why I'm telling you, but here's the thing, democracy doesn't work when the people are not moral. That's why our democracy isn't working now, because our society is amoral. We can't get along anymore. People don't have an understanding of right and wrong, and frankly, they don't even believe in right and wrong because everything is okay.
Yeah, you do you. I'll do me and you do you. That's one of those annoying sayings you hear all the time.
You can't have a society based upon that. It doesn't work.
Listen,
it
if
doesn't work.
Anybody thinks that you're just free in this life to do whatever you want, you're in for a sad, sad lesson. You're not. Freedom has limits. It's just the way it is. Okay, you're not free to do whatever you want. Alan Keyes said it best. You do not have the right to do what is wrong. You do not have the right to do that. And a society that just keeps saying, well, we're free. That's why when people in this whole, I'll be honest with you, Joe Resinello, and I want to let the people out there at the Crusade channel and everybody out there watching or listening to us, will let everybody knows when people talk about freedom, you got to be careful. Now, we value freedom, but we understand freedom in its proper context. And what we have in America is licentiousness. It is not freedom. Licentiousness is just do whatever you want. I have license to do whatever I want. That's not authentic freedom. Freedom is the right to, the freedom that you have is the right to do what you ought to do. But that's the right that you have. You are a free person when it comes to that. So the way they throw around the word, Joe, I get a little leery. I'm not going to lie to you.
But people who listen to our voice, who potentially, I highly doubt you have people on the left listen to our voice unless they're putting a bounty on our head. But in terms of
don't be shocked.
But my point is, like, they'd say, well, who determines what's right and wrong? Who are you to determine what's right and wrong? Well, it's called the natural law. You see, this is, not to get into this, but
no, get into it because
the whole point is the natural law determines what's right and wrong, and when you don't follow it, there are consequences. I say this: you tell a good tree by the fruit it bears. You tell a bad tree by the fruit it bears. Look outside your window. Look within your own family. Look amongst your friends. Look in your neighborhood, wherever you live. Is it working? Seriously, ask yourself that. You say, well, that's a relative statement. No, it's not. Divorces, children who are depressed, overdoses are going
suicides.
It's off the charts.
How about this rampant fear over the last year and a half over an imminently defeatable virus, and people that just going out and out ballistic when they see somebody walking down the street, not around anybody, who's wearing a mask and getting in their face and yelling at them, and all the fear that we saw over the last year and a half. If you want to see a society on the brink of ruin, you look at ours. Okay, the way they sold you this idea that coronavirus is the end of the world, and you listen to them. In other words, you actually took them seriously. Now, precautions, yeah, but the way they tried to sell this thing and the way the American people bought it, why? Because people don't have God. And when you don't have God, you know what you have? Fear. Fear. You know who's not fearing right now? You know who's not fearing? The people of Cuba, who are stepping up saying, look, I'm living a crappy life anyway. The government oppresses me. I don't have the right to go to church. I don't have the right to read a Bible. I don't have the right to free speech. Now they shut down the internet. My life sucks. Might as well die fighting. Might as well go down swinging. Might as well do something to bring attention to these people so that these criminals, because that's what they are, all communists. Get it through your head, lefties. All communists, Patrice Cullors included, all communists are criminal thugs. That's what they are, okay? These people are saying, you know what? I'm gonna die. Look, I'm either gonna live free or I'm gonna die trying, and authentically free.
Well, that's when
okay?
Cuba goes down. When you get 1 million people who are willing to die, like
the regime will be toast.
it's over, and that's anywhere.
Joe,
That's
you tell the
anywhere.
people about Poland in the late 1970s.
I mean, well, Poland. You watch the movie. What's the father?
9 Days to Change the World. George Weigel.
But I was actually thinking about the priest that was killed. I mean, solidarity. Those people got the crap beat out of them. There was a priest. He's probably going to be declared escape. Papalusco. I mean, they fought for their freedom. And here's another thing about freedom and power. Power is never given away. It's not. Power is taken. I'm telling you this right now. Power is not given away. It's taken. That's a fact. You know, we're going to have a hard time prying the power out of the hands of this regime because we gave it to them. I'm telling you this right now. And you notice we're going to cover a story later on how they're now censoring posts in coordination with Facebook management, the administration. It's just the door is going to get wider and wider and wider. We gave them the right to take our freedoms away. You don't just voluntarily give that back. It's taken.
And they're not giving it back.
And they're not going to.
The freedom and the
tell you
rights that
right
you have
now.
as an American citizen that you have decided to give up because you think it's A-OK to censor speech on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else, okay? They're not giving that power back. I got to break it to you.
No way.
You have to actually, the only way that's going to happen is if you get people who go there and who want to enact legislation that does, let's say, take the power away from the government and disperses it, distributes it back to the states where it's supposed to be, and takes the power away from the big tech, all right, and breaks them up so that you have, you don't have this concentration of power in big tech. Same thing with the banks, okay? That's the only way you're going to do it. But don't think they're going to give it up. Don't think Biden's going to give it up.
No way.
Don't think Pelosi. You've given them the power. Joe and I haven't. You have. All right? If you vote for them, you've given them the power. Usually for stupid reasons like abortion and gay marriage. Okay? So don't cry. In other words, when you find out the government has way too much power and they ain't giving it up.
But also,
they ain't giving it up.
I want to just take a little spin. Do we have a little time before the break?
Yeah, we got 5 minutes before the break.
Joe Hoff reported on this, and I think this might take a little longer than 5 minutes, but I think we got to kind of blow this out a little bit. The Homeland Security Secretary, what's his name?
Mayorkas. Hispanic.
He basically said that the refugees fleeing Haiti and Cuba by boat will not be given basically a welcome in the United States. His exact words. And I heard this.
Now, you got to hear this out there at the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. You got to hear this because that's all you've heard for the last few years is about immigration and getting to the root causes of why people want to come to America. Go ahead, Joe.
He says, allow me to be clear. If you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States. Now, here's the thing. Is this a political decision? Because clearly they're allowing anyone to come through the southern border. It's a fact. It's factual. The border is now porous. And they're doing that for a reason. If you ask me, this is my opinion. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. It's for votes. It's for votes. They know these people are going to, if they come to the United States, support them. If you ask me, they're trying to turn some of those states, those border states like Arizona and Texas, through allowing a porous border to turn eventually blue. That's my theory. Call me a conspiracy nut. That's what I think.
No, that's what they've been doing for decades.
Clearly,
Joe.
the Cubans are not going to vote for the Democrats. So one could speculate. Again, it's speculation. I don't know. One can speculate, but it's the Haitian piece. Because here's the thing about that. I'm married to a Haitian American. They're not overtly political people, like one way or the other. I mean, that I have noticed, in my interdealings with them. And like I said, I am married to one. Cubans are. I know Cubans. They're very, very political people because basically their homeland was stolen from them. Why aren't you cutting the Haitians a break?
Right.
I've been to Haiti. I've done humanitarian work there twice. It is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Why wouldn't you want to help them? They're also people of color. Why wouldn't you want to help them? Because clearly they're in need. And this is outside of the assassination of their president. The Cuban thing doesn't shock me as much. The Haitian thing does. It really does.
You're right. You're right. I thought about that too. Unfortunately, I don't know all the politics of Haiti, so I'm sure there's a reason why these lefties like Mayorkas don't want to let Haitians in. But my thing is this. I got to listen to Kamala say that, well, we need to get to the root causes to see why people are coming from Central and South America. Well, how about this, Kamala? Why don't you tell Mayorkas to shut up and change your policy, or you change the policy, because those people in Cuba, you know what the root cause is. Communist oppression. You know what the problem is there. You don't have to guess. No investigation needed. You don't have to spend billions of our tax dollars to find out what's plain as the nose on your face. The people of Cuba, number one, they're not Democrats. You know that, because traditionally Cubans have not voted for the Democrats, because you've been in bed and supported the Castro regime for decades, okay? And you know what it is. You know it. You see it on TV over the last week. So why are they not allowed to come in when they're fleeing the exact oppression that you seem to be railing against? Because these are your buddies, Kamala. These are your buddies in the communist Cuban regime that are doing this to the people. These are people that you're fond of. These are people that you would do business with, because you don't give a damn about Hispanics. You're nothing but a damn hypocrite is what you are, and all you and all your leftist friends. Okay? People of Cuba should be able to, you demand from Diaz-Canel right now, the American government, anybody who wants to leave Cuba can leave right now, and America will take them. We take everybody else. Why wouldn't we take those good people? That's my argument. And that's what pisses me off about them. So Kamala has no credibility on the immigration issue. Neither does Mayorkas, who, by the way, was born in Havana. Let's take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe, and we're angry now. We're angry. But we're going to be better in the next segment. So we're on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online, at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, go on crusadechannel.com and hit listen free so that you could get a preview of all the station's content. We know you're going to want to be a subscriber. Follow Joe and I all over the place on social media, particularly now Rumble. Please follow us on Rumble. We ask you to do so and support us in that way. And if you want to drop in a couple of bucks, patreon.com/The Frontline with Joe and Joe, and you can drop in a couple bucks. Stick around. We got a lot more to talk about. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and we're way in the breach. We're on the Crusade channel, and we are talking about Cuba. Where are we headed, Joe?
Well, actually, I mean, we were just chatting about, like, the immigration policy. I guess we can continue it. I was going to go to Carville, but I just want to maybe opine a little bit on, I'm shocked at the Haitian thing. I really am. Because, again, I was there 6 months after the earthquake, and I was there before that with the Missionaries of Charity. The poverty there is mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. I worked a dispensary in Haiti. I'll be honest with you, you cannot even, from an American's perspective, you can't even believe what those people are enduring. And that was even before the earthquake. Mm-hmm. So what is the problem? You know, like, why wouldn't you, just from a pure humanitarian perspective, not politics, pure, like, listen, the country is a basket case politically and economically, and the people are suffering beyond comprehension. And then the president gets assassinated, and I'm still friendly with some of the people that I went to Haiti with a number of years ago that still give aid to the country. The gangs now are basically running the streets. They had to actually stop a trip that they were recently going to go down there because of that. So my point is, I don't understand the logic there. Well, I really don't.
And again, this is pure conjecture, but I think it's a good one, okay, is that allowing Haitians to come into America is not going to be politically advantageous to the Democrat Party.
But isn't that racist?
Of course it is.
Because, I mean...
Well, that's why we're at the front line with Joe and Joe, because when they call you racist, point the finger right back at them and say, as we do here on the show all the time, this is not a first for us, we say it all the time, they are the racists. The difference is, though, they say it. We actually can back it up, and you're backing it up right now. Why are those people of color not allowed to come to the United States from Haiti? Why, Kamala? Why, Secretary Mayorkas? Why? Why are you not allowing them to come? You say everyone else could come. We can't question anybody coming across that border. If they want to come, they could come. Why not let the people of Haiti? Something tells me it has to do with, again, it's a pure guess, religion. Haiti is very Catholic. Unfortunately, there's a little bit too much voodoo too, but Haiti is very Catholic. There's something about the people of Haiti that leftist oligarchs don't want in America.
No, but
they don't feel it's going to benefit them.
I just put the question out that it should be asked. I don't understand why. The Cuban piece I actually get.
Right, because they're not going to vote Democrat.
It's political, and I get that. And they don't want Florida to even go further to the GOP. Because, to be honest with you, I think Florida's gone for a while from the Democrats moving forward. However,
the Republicans would really have to do something
I get that,
stupid.
but it's the Haitian piece I just don't understand, because they are people that have been in need for decades, and they don't want them. And I just want to know, why aren't they called to the carpet on that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're supposed to be the party for the poor, right? Well, it doesn't get any poorer than that. Why don't you help those people?
Right.
That's all. And why aren't people asking them that question? I think it's a valid question. This reeks of hypocrisy.
Sure it does.
Their immigration policy reeks of hypocrisy. It's completely it's not consistent. This man's statement is so, you would think a Republican would be making that statement. To be honest with you, if you closed your eyes the way that people view, or they tried to paint Donald Trump at the border, you would think he's making this statement. This doesn't almost jive with all their rhetoric. It's hard and it's fast. Let me be clear. You will be turned away. We will not accept people by sea. You're accepting them over land, left and right.
And then over at the Texas border and Arizona and New Mexico, they're saying, come on in. So what is here's a good question. What's the criteria you use, Kamala? What is your criteria for allowing one group in, no questions asked, but telling these other two groups of people down in Haiti and Cuba, you're not allowed to come in? What is the criteria that you're using? You're not going to give us one because you don't have a criteria. Your criteria is your own political self-interest. Those people you feel coming across the other way, which will come back in the future to bite you in the ass, because those people, once they get educated in America, are going to understand that you stand for things that they don't stand for. That's a different conversation. But as it is right now, you allow those people in, but you people of color in, but you won't allow these people of color in. That is a double standard that you need to explain somehow. Hopefully somebody asks that question. Somebody in the little press scrum there, that press room at the White House, maybe asks Jen Psaki and says, can you talk to us about this? All right?
She'll circle back.
Well, she's really good, and she's really good at circling back. We circle back to the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room's open, crusadechannel.com/chat, and on to our next story. Now, some Democrats get it.
Well, this is an interesting statement. It caught my eye. Matt Vespa is reporting on it. James Carville, for people who may not know who he is, he ran basically Clinton's political strategy. He was his strategist when Clinton won the White House. And he basically said, questioned the Democrats, their woke ideas, saying that you're not going to win elections. And he said this, interestingly enough, on Chris Cuomo's show on CNN.
Another genius.
So basically he said, Democrats are allowing, I'm using his words, a noisy wing of our party to define the rest of us. Carville goes on. He says, these are kind people. They're naive and all into language and identity, and that's all right, but they're not storming the Capitol, and by the way, they're not going to win elections. And I think he gets it completely. And he goes on. I want to read this part about it. And this, again, this is on Cuomo's show on CNN. I give him props, actually, for saying this as boldly as he did.
He's an interesting guy, Carville. I can't bring myself to completely dislike him. He is married to Mary Matlin. My understanding is that he's a Republican. She's a Republican. My understanding is that they're both Catholic. Okay, he's one of those Democrats that seems to want to. He could get around his party's position on abortion by saying, "Yeah, but the Republicans support these things." One of those Democrats. I can't bring myself to completely dislike him though, because sometimes he makes sense.
Well, this is what he said, and I think he's spot on, actually. He basically said, and this is the difference, and this is something I recently posted on my social media when I read this, between Obama and Clinton. You see, Clinton, he was involved in Clinton's circle. Clinton was a politician and Obama is an ideologue. Make no mistake about it. Obama is not a politician. He is an ideologue, and Clinton was a politician. And this is what Carville said going on, like we were just chatting about it. He basically said people regarding these woke ideas and what he calls the noisy left-wing group of the party. He says this: people are interested more in improving their lives as opposed to hearing about someone else's pronouns. People want candidates to address their lives. Biden did a little, then he goes on into details about how he did a little worse. He breaks down the vote, like Biden did worse in with suburban women versus blah, 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 blah. Black voters and Hispanic voters Trump picked up. But this is the thing. This is not who Biden is. You see, he gets it. Biden, not that I ever liked Joe Biden as a politician, but Joe Biden is not about this woke crapola. Joe Biden is just so happy that he is in the White House that he'll do anything and say anything to stay there, which is sad.
Right.
But my point is, Carville gets it. And I have noticed this. They say the best poll is to talk to people that you know. I've listened to regular people who were indifferent. They were apolitical. They're now in the political fray because they've overplayed their hand.
Well, when you let men into a hot tub, a grown man into a hot tub, completely naked with a 6-year-old girl, and the law allows that, well, guess what? We covered that last week. That little girl's mother, who self-identifies as a Democrat, wanted that guy taken out of that hot tub. And Joe and I, my attitude is, well, as my 81-year-old Italian mother would say, hey, this is too bad. It's too bad. You voted for them.
But even like things like, which we've heard, with the McCain on The View say, 85% of America they're against third trimester abortion. It's a loser.
Joe, look, let's remember something here. And we could speak a little bit more freely because we're on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. Why do you think they're so shrill in what's going on across the country when it comes to strengthening election laws and making sure we have election integrity? Because straight up, okay, you let people vote on things like this. You're a politician and you're Governor Murphy. I over the weekend I met Jack Ciattarelli. I was at the feast here. All right, he's running for governor. Now, up till now, and probably moving forward, I'm going to call him a rhino, okay? Because others have. But I'm going to be fair. We may get an interview with him, okay? He's running for governor. We're not going to get an abortion abolitionist in New Jersey.
Ever.
But he told me that he's in favor of passing legislation. Number one, doing away with Murphy's Reproductive Freedom Act, okay? And having a system where, number one, taxpayers are not going to fund abortion. He went through the whole thing, okay? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, okay? And he also got in trouble. I didn't ask him about it when I saw him, all right? But he got in trouble recently in the New Jersey press because he was railing against 5-year-olds that are being taught this gender ideology. Now, he jumped into that breach. I didn't bring him into that, Joe Rissanello, all right? And then we talked about unions, okay? About the power that they have. But my point is, well, what was my point? What were we talking about?
No, you're just talking about them overplaying their hand.
So even a guy like this who in New Jersey, who's going to skirt kind of the middle, play the middle, even he knows that gender ideology is a loser. It won't hurt him politically in New Jersey, is our larger point.
And Jersey's blue as it gets.
Blue, all right, Jersey's blue, but that's not going to fly. And if you start, let's say, hammering that home and making Murphy have to defend a position where 5-year-olds could be taught about gender ideology in the public school system, Citarelli knows that that's a loser for the Democrats. That's why he seized on it. And he probably believes that too. I mean, a sane person, I'm going to say Jack Citarelli is a sane person. A sane person believes that too. And says, no, 5-year-olds shouldn't be taught that stuff. But my larger point is, that's why they're being so shrill on election integrity. Because if they actually have to go out and campaign on the things that they say that they want to do,
they get crushed.
They get
killed. Crushed. And you see, this is, he says, it's about winning. You see, Carville gets it. He gets it. It's about winning. You see, I'm telling you right now, these ideas, we say this time, and they stink. They don't resonate with people. They average, normal, when I mean normal people who have kids and work and live from Maine to Hawaii.
And then the same person who lives and works and drops their kid off at public school and doesn't want little Johnny being told by his teacher behind the parent's back and in a very sneaky way that little Johnny could become little Janie. That father, if he knew about it, and listen, because of social media, Joe Resinello, that's why they want to shut down social media. Because of social media and other outlets, people are starting to get what's going on in the public school education establishment. That this is the stuff the unions and the administration and the state are trying to ram down their throats. Parents are going, excuse me? Have you seen these women going across about critical race theory? These mothers? So you're not going to teach my daughter that she's supposed to hate herself because of the color of her skin. That's a totally defensible position. Joy Reid called her a racist, called those women racist. That's because Joy Reid is a racist and she's just projecting, okay? But people are not going to go for it. They're not going to go for it. Carville made a good point. You want to hear something that's going to make them, that really has them shaking in their boots? Carville said it. We did lose traction with black and Hispanic voters. That hurts them beyond belief.
Well, in Florida,
specifically. Florida's gone, like you said, for at least a while. Republicans really have to blow it in Florida to have Florida go back to being blue. Florida is a red state right now, and it'll continue to be red. But my point is this, okay? You're going against Hispanics, Cubans. You're going against you're going against Haitians who are black. In other words, you're already losing ground with Hispanics and blacks. If the black population in America started consistently voting on the national level 25% for Republicans, and Hispanics get up to the projection of over 50%, and forget about it, if the Asians get to the projection of 70%, the Democrats are toast. They're going to have to rob every election in the country in order to gain any kind of power. The only place they'll get elected is San Francisco and the East Village. That's it. You know, outside of that, the whole country will be red. If in fact that was to happen with the numbers. African Americans, just like the people of Cuba, they're tired of being taken for granted by the Democrats.
And Carver also brings up a good point, Joe. He basically says, this isn't Joe Biden. You see, Joe Biden, remember, and I've even heard this out of people's mouths, he's a centrist, he's a moderate. No, he's not. Joe Biden will say anything to keep that chair. He's so happy that he has it. It's sad, actually.
Joe, they might get rid of him. I mean, we've been saying for a long time. My over-under is gone, by the way. I said originally August. That's blown out of the water. But not for nothing. They can't handle just how low he's going. It's like there's no, what do you call it? Like, you know, when the trapeze guys go back and forth at the circus, what's the thing underneath them? The safety net.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no safety net with Joe Biden. Joe, every time he opens his mouth, these Democrat operatives go like this. They go, "Boy, we can't deal with this guy."
The thing is, though, Karis can't carry it. You see,
well, that's their problem.
She can't. No,
that's not our problem.
She can't. Like, they need like that cover. I think that they're happy, to be honest with you, that he's there. If you ask me, and even if he is, and frankly, he is. I mean, some of the statements, you're just kind of like. You know, people had things to say about Trump. Oh, he's inappropriate. He's rude. He doesn't have the temperament. Blah blah blah. He's mean. But
didn't Biden come out recently and blast half the American people again? Didn't he criticize all Trump voters again?
Well,
now, whether or not whatever you feel about the election, Joe Resinello, my point is this: you know that 70 million people voted for Trump. You're the president of the United States. 76 million people voted for Trump. You're the president of the United States. And this is how you talk to the American people? Donald Trump called the press the enemy of the American people. He didn't call the rank and file Democrats in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and anywhere else. He didn't do anything to those people. He didn't disparage them in any way because they didn't vote for him. He called the press the enemy of the American people. He called the Democrat Party a party of well, he called them a bunch of different things. But he did not disparage those people who did not vote for him. Joe Biden's up there disparaging the very people that didn't vote for him, and he's the Joe. He's the unifier. The arms, remember, Joe, I told you.
That is the most hysterical thing I've ever heard.
I know. Once in a while, at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, once in a while, I have Joe to the point where every time I do one thing, he laughs. He can't help but to laugh. And when I remind Joe of the CNN host who said that the lights of the reflecting pool extended out, and they reminded him of the arms of Joe Biden reaching out to the American people to heal a wounded nation. He just called Trump supporters white supremacists and racists. 76 million people, a quarter of the nation's population. He just called them white supremacists and racists and called us insurrectionists. And he's a unifier. And then we're all the ones when Trump says the press is the enemy of the American people, when the press gives him a pass on that, well, you are the enemy of the American people then. Oh,
gosh. I mean, I'll tell you, it's just embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. It's so sad. It's absurd.
Let me tell you something. I think that, and the more that we get black conservatives out there, like the lieutenant governor that we covered, Mark Robinson, right, from North Carolina, listen, people saw for a long time the black liberal establishment, same way with Italians. So we're not knocking it, okay? In other words, Italians and Newark and everything else, their parents and grandparents told them, well, we voted Democrat. You got to vote for the Democrat. FDR, and he's got the policy, and we got to vote for the Democrat. And John F. Kennedy, he's a Catholic, so we got to vote for John F. Kennedy. And then people eventually broke off. Catholics in particular, ethnic Catholics, other Catholics, eventually broke off, particularly after the sexual revolution in the 1960s. The more black youth start to see people like Candace Owens, and not because we agree with them on everything. I'm sure we could find our areas of disagreement, but fundamentally conservative-minded people. When they see people like Mark Robinson, Larry Elder, from what we understand, wants to run for governor of California. More power to him. Black man running for governor of California. And he's a real conservative. He's not like Arnold. Arnold is a rhino Republican. He wants to get rid of dirty gas. Remember dirty oil? So Arnold was a rhino, okay, acted more like a liberal. Larry Elder actually is conservative, okay? So the more younger black people, African Americans, see in the culture and in the politics, I made you laugh at that one too. But the more they see this in the culture and the politics, they're waking up. Again, that's not a criticism because it took Catholics a long time in America to wake up to the true nature of the Democrats. So let's pray for them. We're going to take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, always with Joe Resinello, in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline. Should I do the whole show like Arnold?
You should. That was awesome.
You'll have to listen to my church. My church. You have to get to the chopper with my church. So you're at the front. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, in the breach on the Crusade Channel. That's right. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please, we tell you for your own good. My church is behind a wall that cannot be censored. So if you want great content, what could it cost you? $10 a month? Cancel Netflix. Cancel HBO. That's not going to do anything for your intellect, certainly not going to do anything for your soul. So groups, organizations like the Crusade Channel, whether or not Joe and I are on the Crusade Channel, I will always be a supporter of the Crusade Channel. We would encourage you to do that also. Now, having said that, okay, Joe Resinello on our show at the front line with Joe and Joe is very fond of reminding everybody something that we already know, that it all comes down to money. Most of the time, let's put it like that, it comes down to money. Joe Resinello, what am I talking about?
Well, we're talking public schools. We got a couple stories because it's so important what's going on in the public schools. It's so sad. Basically, this is coming from the Daily Mail. This is shocking. It just goes to show you what your taxpayer dollars are used, what's it used for. And this is California. California School District will spend $40 million making ethnic studies mandatory for high school students. Get this, sparking a woke gold rush for consultants who charge $1,500 an hour to train teachers in critical race theory.
Joe, lawyers at Scat and ARPS don't make $1,500 an hour.
And this is it. Governor Newsom, he has a $100 billion education plan that he's rolling out.
Man, no wonder why they're broke.
Well, that was going to be one of the things I wanted to talk about. But this is what the discipline contends. This is part of this educational plan with racism. This is being taught to children. Racism, white supremacy culture, anti-blackness, anti-indigenous people, a nation within a nation relationships, whatever the heck
That's
is.
not America. Go ahead, Joe, but that's not America. We're not a nation within a nation.
The course is designed to educate students to be socially, politically, environmentally, and economically conscious of their personal connections to local and transnational histories. $100 billion. And the point that Joe made is so on point. They're broke, yet they could spend money like this. How about we do this for $100 billion? We get the homeless people off the street. They're crapping in the gutter. And there's disease that goes along with when you crap in the gutter in L.A., in San Francisco.
I saw a video the other day.
I mean, damn.
We've been covering this for over a year because it's been going on for quite some time. I still can't get used to the pictures and the videos that are out there of San Francisco and Los Angeles. And you're like, this is a civilized place? Or at least that's what we're told.
Dude, it's a beautiful city.
All the smart... No, Joe, but being a beautiful city...
No, but I'm just saying.
They've wrecked it.
Listen,
I was in San Francisco twice in my life. I loved it both times. I love looking out at the bay. I went to Napa Valley. I went in the city. I liked some of the architecture. I like San Francisco. I really do as a place. All right? Their politics suck. Just like I love my state of New Jersey. Okay.
Sad.
I love New Jersey. I'm seriously thinking about leaving. Okay. And I always said I'd die here. The thing is, I love my state, but the fact is, the state's a disaster. And the thing is, now we don't have people defecating in the street yet. But Joe's right. $100 billion. Joe, I'm gonna make you want me to make a policy recommendation? I've been making Joe laugh a lot tonight. Should I do it like Arnold? I'll make you a policy recommendation. So here you go. Here's $100 billion. You take now he wants to pour that into the public schools, which, as Joe and I have outlined on this show, on the front line with Joe and Joe, in most of these places, you could send a child to private school for half the money. So let's take the $100 billion, cut it in half, and for every parent who wants it, who you're going to spend that money on, who has kids, for each kid, you give them the money they need to send their kid to a private, Catholic, or charter school, which will encourage the establishment of charter schools and destroy the public school establishment. That would be a tremendous step forward to civilizing a place like California. That'll cost you $50. The other $50, you set up homeless shelters. When the ACLU shows up, you have security guards there and real cops to show them out. Okay? You don't listen to the ACLU. You frisk people when they come in. You give them drug tests. You give them alcohol tests. Okay? And if they want to go in that shelter and they pass those tests, you allow those people in where they get food, shelter, and clothing. Real protection. And the ones who don't, sorry, they go to jail. They're vagrants and they go to jail. If they don't want to get off the street because they can't panhandle so they can buy drugs and alcohol, they go to jail. That's what you do with the other $50 billion. Give or take. There's my policy proposal. Argue with it.
Dude, did you ever watch the movie The Predator with Arnold?
Get to the chopper!
That they have the best lines.
Listen, there are movies that are known for lines. Goodfellas is a line movie. Godfather, to a degree, is a line. Pulp Fiction is a movie for lines. Predator.
Oh, so many of them.
Whatever's out there, kill Harper! Get to the chopper!
When he's like,
Arnold's crazy.
Billy, you're not afraid of any man. We're all gonna die, Pancho. That is so many great. We're all gonna die. That movie is fantastic. I could watch it 100 times.
Chris Lopez is following us, at the front line with Joe and Joe. He said California is approving the first in the nation universal income. The biggest disaster that the American people could fall for, and there's a lot of them we fell for in the last 6 years. Not people like Joe and I, not people like you, Chris, but many other people out there, like abortion as a backstop to the sexual revolution in the 1960s, okay? You know, when you get pregnant, well, you could always kill your kid. The other one, if we allow universal basic income to gain any traction, let me tell you this right now. We have all become slaves. We're already quasi-slaves to the system, which we're trying to fight against here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. If we allow Andrew Yang and others to try to propose a universal basic income, God help us all. We are all slaves. We are all now working for the state. Do you see how the Marxism creeps in? I don't want your universal basic income. I want my job. It's my job. Whether I love it or hate it, it's mine. Okay? And money I earn belongs to me and my family. Okay? I don't want your universal basic income because you're not going to determine how much money I get based on how much I believe in those BS ideas that you propose. Okay,
how much universal are basic people.
Well, listen, but that's but guys like Andrew Yang. I mean, he's out there. Well, you know, it's $1,000 a month. You know what you do with $1,000 a month, Mr.
Nothing.
Yang? And you're supposed to be the smart one. You're supposed to be the billionaire who tells guys like Joe and I that we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, I don't want your $1,000. I don't want it if you gave me $10,000 a month as universal basic income. I don't want it. I don't. I want my job, and I don't care if I make half that. I want my job because my job doesn't belong to you.
What was in Caddyshack when Rodney, he was a Wang, it wasn't Yang, when he was going into the golf store and he's like, give me 6 of these, give me 6.
It was Wang.
It was Wang. It wasn't Yang.
Yeah, and I never saw Caddyshack all the way through. And people have told me, hey, you're a movie guy. You never saw. I just never did.
Oh,
okay?
he's Wang.
But I saw Predator a long time ago with Arnold. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pizzolo, Joe Rosinello. So yeah, I mean, like you look at this, you know, they're making ethnic studies compulsory.
No, but just look at $1,500 an hour. That's a good day's. That's a good day's pay.
Critical race theory is a recent development, at least as far as the cultural consciousness is concerned, where we're hearing about critical race theory. Where'd the experts come from? How did they become experts in this field all of a sudden? They're Democrat Party operatives. They're Democrat Party operatives.
Well,
is
they're
who they
college
are.
professors. They're cashing in.
They're
Joe.
cashing in.
They're probably teachers at Berkeley. They're probably like that's.
Remember what
who
you said before about if you work for Public Works, it's probably because your uncle or somebody got you the job. You don't have any real skill set. Okay, and God bless those guys. Everybody's got to fill potholes. I respect everybody who gets up and goes to work. Okay, those guys are living, not that they're living high in the hog, but they get a really nice benefits package, okay, and a really good wage. So let's put it like that. And you got to know somebody. Something tells me that to get this $1,500 an hour gig, you better know Kamala and Uncle Joe.
It's probably, without a doubt, they're probably like Stanford professors, UCLA professors. They're just cashing in. I'll be honest with you. Listen, strike while the iron's hot. Good for you. $1,500 an hour to spew friggin' nonsense? Crap, I could spew nonsense in my kitchen. I don't get $1,500 an hour for crying out loud.
Right.
That's insane.
Somebody in the chat room called us idiots. Okay, but it's our show. and if you think we're idiots, fine. You have freedom of choice. You can move on, okay, or whatever the case might be. So we've been called that before. I like to break it to you. Doesn't bother us. We don't think we're idiots. We have PhDs in common sense. And if our policies were implemented in America, it would be a much better place, a much more just place to live and work and raise your family. So we don't care how we sound.
Well, I'll be honest with you, not for nothing. People who are paying $1,500 an hour for someone to spew that, they're the idiots.
Well, no, but remember, how did they end this article that we got from the Daily Mail? California parents deserve to know what's happening in their districts, and Americans deserve to know how their money is being spent. If you know that your money, if you're sending your kid to a public school, if you know your money's being spent on this nonsense, and you're not opening your mouth because you're afraid to be called a racist,
absurd.
Then you're the idiot. You're the idiot, and you're sacrificing your child's education. So if I were you in California, I would demand, number one, that Newsom be recalled, which I don't know, Gruesome Newsom.
Gruesome Newsom.
All right, elect Larry Elder, and you'll have, one thing I know about Larry Elder, you're going to have choice in public schools, especially in the inner cities.
So we just covered California. Let's go to Chicago. This one's shocking, actually. Julian Conradson reports on this. Basically, the Chicago public schools are making it mandatory to provide free condoms to, get this, 5th graders. This policy was approved by Chicago Public School Board of Education in December after years of pushback. It is part of the board's expanded quote-unquote vision of sexual education. Now, get this. Ken Fox, The head doctor for the Chicago public school system, this is what he had to say. He's going to send out a letter explaining the new policy to parents and administrators. This is what he says. He's a doctor. He acknowledges that this is not normal for fifth graders to have sex, let alone choose to have it. But according to him, 10-year-olds have a right to make the decision for themselves.
No, they don't.
And it's the appropriate age for them to be given birth control because of science. This is where you say to yourself, I don't care what political party you identify with. You're going to tell a parent that you have the right to usurp their authority and tell their 10-year-old that they can have a condom. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. I was at one time 10. If you handed me a condom, first of all, you'd laugh your ass off. That's number one as a 10-year-old. But secondly, if you ask me, you're encouraging them to have sex. And why should parents have to stand for that? They pay. Here's the thing. I pay taxes too. You see, they almost talk like I don't contribute, but yet they ram things like this down your throat. I pay taxes too. And by the way, I pay a lot of them.
We're in New Jersey.
A lot of taxes. So my point is, why isn't it appropriate for me to voice my disapproval of this?
Because you're too parochial, Joe. You're too Catholic. You're not smart like these people. They went to college. Okay, they studied educational theory, like, you know, the bad ideas espoused by people like John Dewey. Okay, plus you throw in the Marxism. Okay, you throw in their hatred of humanity, because these people hate you. When you want to teach a 10-year-old kid to go out and have sex, you hate that kid.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
Hate that kid. You have no consideration for what that kid's going to become after he takes you up on what you've told him to do, because he's just beyond the age of reason. 2 years beyond the age of reason. Age of reason generally considered to be about 8 years old. A 10-year-old kid, you're encouraging him out to go out and have sex. And then when that kid destroys his life because they listen to you, you don't care about that kid. You think you taught him to be free. You taught him to be a slave. You taught him how to destroy his life. And you did so at taxpayer expense. And when guys turn like us and parents turn around and say, we don't want this, you call them names. In the meantime, Joe made a good point. Where do you get your money from?
Me.
You work for us. I know you don't like to hear that. But have you ever heard of us? Have you ever heard a stone cold fact? Something that I don't have to prove. It's true on its surface. You work for us. You make no money on your own. You create nothing. You work for the state that takes our money and puts it in your pocket. You work for us. So do the politicians that employ you. You all work for us. When we open our mouth, see, if Joe and I go to work and our boss opens his mouth, we respond to our boss because our boss pays our bills, okay? So we do what our boss tells us to do within reason. And there's certain things you're not going to do. But as long as it falls under the job description, you do it. You people work for us, and yet you stick your thumb in our eye every chance you get and tell us we don't know what we're talking about. I don't want a 10-year-old kid to learn about sex. I don't want an 18-year-old in the public school system to learn about sex in the public school system.
But just stay in your lane.
Well, stay in your lane
That's
means,
all.
Joe, but the parents, stop entrusting sex education to these people and start educating your own sons and daughters on sex, primarily the dangers of sex and how it could ruin their lives.
Tom Gugliotta put it perfectly. Ron Burgundy, don't fight it. It's science.
Don't fight, right.
Great lines
Thanks for the line,
in
Tom.
that movie, by the way. Anchorman.
Anchorman, yeah.
Fantastic movie.
Another movie good for one-liners, by the way. And I am not a Will Ferrell fan.
That movie is fantastic,
That movie, I gotta say, was actually
oh my gosh,
was actually
that
pretty
movie
funny.
is insane. Oh my gosh.
But
He's like, I woke up on the couch of a Japanese couple. They were next door. They were so angry. Dude, it's insane.
My favorite part is when he plays the flute and he ends up by saying, "Hey, Aqualung." I'm a big Jethro Tull fan. But anyway, so here's this here's one of the idiots in this whole thing in the Chicago. Now, Chicago, I know a lot of you out there at the front, listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. You're probably saying to yourself, guys, You're talking about Chicago, and you're not talking about people being shot, because that's in the news every day.
Not according to Lightfoot.
Not according to Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot. Okay, the mayor of Chicago. I'm sorry, the Lord. Well,
Dude, you do that like what was it? Kramer's lawyer. Remember Kramer's lawyer on Seinfeld?
No, who's the lawyer?
He always would. What are you talking about? Kramer's an upstanding young man. Like that.
I know. I know. Check him out. I have a vague memory of it. But the thing is, don't they have bigger fish to fry? In other words, when you see, look, a lot of these kids that are being gunned down, a lot of these kids, sorry, it's just the way it is. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. A lot of them have fathered children who they're not being fathers to. And they're out there running with gangs and they're shooting each other. You think, Mayor Lightfoot, you want to ease up on the sexual liberation stuff and start worrying about crime and what we're going to do about making sure that the next generation coming up is not out there in the streets shooting each other also? So you think maybe you got bigger fish to fry? Here's this idiot from CPS. What is it? Well, Chicago Public Schools. All right, young people have the right to accurate and clear information to make healthy decisions. 10-year-olds do not make sexual decisions. Mothers and fathers make that decision for them. That's the way it works for time immemorial. You're 10, you don't have sex. If you're really smart, what you tell your kid is, don't have sex till you get married.
Do you actually have to say that?
Yes, nowadays in this woke culture,
I can't even believe it.
You gotta say it. You gotta push back on these people. This is what they're doing.
Jackie Childs, Kramer's lawyer, baby. Yes, the chat room comes through. Tom and Christy Howard. Yes, love it. Jackie, dude, check him out. Fantastic.
All right, I'm gonna have to.
You have to check him out.
I'm gonna have to.
You do Lightfoot like Jackie Childs.
I've seen the character before. I need to be refreshed. but that's what we're dealing with here. It's like you got the wild west in Chicago, and rather than what we talk about on this show all the time, restoring some semblance of order. Yes, part of that order is how we're teaching kids, what we're teaching kids. If you're teaching them to go out and screw at 10 years old, and by the way, here's a condom, Johnny. You're just adding to the problem. You're not doing anything to correct the problem. You're adding to the problem. You're not helping this person to fulfill something good in his or her life. You're adding to their destruction. You're bringing them down the road or the path of destruction. Why do we allow people like Kenneth Fox to get away with this?
Dude,
why do we allow Lori Lightfoot to get away with this?
Do you know, when you said you're going to let them screw, it reminded me, when I was in college, my friend dated this girl, Kim Ball. And I went to University of Scranton, and her grandmother lived near Scranton. So she said to Kim, she said, this is an old woman. When they went to visit her, my friend Mike McCabe told me, she said, Kim, if you smoke, you'll drink, and if you drink, you'll screw. And every time I hear that,
she just laid out the story of my early adult life.
Kim, in other words, if you smoke, you'll drink, and if you drink, you'll screw.
Listen, this is why I've explained on the show all the time, a million times on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. I will say it. I'm not proud of it. But I say it as a man who is Catholic, who has had a conversion in his life, an authentic conversion. Thank the Lord Jesus Christ, okay? But that statement that Joe said that the grandmother just said, I wish I heard that. Now, my mother and father did say that, okay? Not quite so eloquently, because it's so true. I started with cigarettes when I was 13, started drinking when I was 17, maybe even younger than that, and I don't even want to tell you about my sexual liberation from the time I was in my late teens till the time I met my wife and settled down and became a normal human being and a Christian, a Catholic, okay? And I try my best, imperfectly, of course, to listen. But that's exactly right. That's why I hate when the left says things don't lead to one another. Like, marijuana is not a gateway drug. Yes, it is. Tell my friend Timmy Mara, who's dead. Well, you can't tell him. You want to know why? Because he's dead. He died in an alley. You know how he started? Cigarettes and booze. And the only reason I didn't do drugs is because my father said, I'll kill you and I'll start over again if you ever come home high. My father said that. And I took him to heart on that. He wasn't happy that I smoked cigarettes, okay? And he always told me to watch my drinking, okay? But my father told me if you do drugs, I'll kill you and start over again, okay? My friend Timmy died in an alley. My friend Timmy started with pot, okay? And I know a lot of other people in my life who have had immense problems. Maybe they're not dead. Tremendous problems, and they started with pot. This notion that one activity doesn't lead to another is a lie. And if you drink, or if you smoke, you're going to drink, and if you drink, you're going to screw. That's exactly the order of things when you're going down the wrong path.
I love it.
And these kids should not be encouraged to do it. And parents, again, who pay the bills, they pay the bills here. Parents need to step up. Joe, are we in segment 3? We're in segment 3, right? We got to take a break.
Yeah, we got to take.
Yeah, we got to take a break. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're at the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. So yeah, I mean, just to put a finer point on it from the last segment, this is where we really, all of us, just need to step up. And we have to start telling these people, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm sorry, a lot of you minority women, parents, single moms in the inner city, you need to start stepping up too. Don't encourage your daughters to go out and have sex. And even if you're not doing that, go down to the school board and find out what these teachers are teaching your kids, both your boys and your girls. You need to step up. Believe me when I tell you, you have more power, particularly young black women in the inner city. You have more power than you know. They take advantage of your vote, okay? They will listen to you if you open your mouth, especially if you organize. Okay, so the thing is, we have to prevent them from doing this or we're going to lose generations to come, and that's not an exaggeration.
Well, this is an interesting, I think, article, Joe. This is Bill Donahue from the Catholic League, and the article is entitled, "Do White Christians Deserve Reparations?" To be honest with you, he brings something up that I don't think a lot of people think about or even know about.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Absolutely.
I think he brings something up in this, and that's why I wanted to talk about this. He brings something up that people don't want to talk about. See, the narrative, and Joe's going to get into it. The narrative that we're spoon-fed, we're always hear about the slavery of Africans by white Europeans, okay, which occurred. We know that occurred, okay? We all learned about the slave trade when we were in the first grade, okay? And we know that the British Empire had slavery until they put it to an end 80 years before we did, or 100 years before we did, something along those lines. Anyway, my point is, that's what you always hear, but they always withhold the whole truth from you. That's why this article is important, particularly in light of the fact that everybody wants reparations now on the left. Well, let's talk about reparations, because I think I'm due some.
This is what Donahue says, basically. He begins with the economist Thomas Sowell, brilliant guy, smartest guy in the room, just about every room he goes in. Basically what Sowell says, he recalls that Adam Smith, who's obviously the author of Wealth of Nations, he observed in 1776 that Western Europe was the only place in the world where slavery did not exist.
Repeat that, Joe.
In 1776, Western Europe was the only place in the world where slavery did not exist. Sowell further notes that nowhere in the world was slavery a controversial issue prior to the 18th century. Now, by the way, for those who may not know, Sowell is an African American, a brilliant man, Harvard-educated economist. He goes on, "It wasn't controversial in Africa or Asia or the Middle East. They were accustomed to slavery. No, it was in Western Europe and in the newly created United States where objections to slavery were first registered."
Quickly, by whom? White Christians. William Wilberforce in England, okay? And in the United States, it was the Christian churches in New England where the abolitionist movement began. So before you condemn all you lefties like Ibram Kendi and Joyce Reid and the rest of you race hucksters, okay, white Christians are the ones who are the catalyst for the abolitionist movement, first in England and then in America.
So then he goes on, he says, "It seems odd then that nations which ended slavery are the ones being tapped for reparations. Yet that is exactly what the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, wants. She recently said that those nations that engaged in or profited from enslavement and transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans and colonialism, as well as those who continue to profit from this legacy, should pay reparations."
Go ahead, Joe. Go
ahead. But here's the interesting thing, which is brought out, and what Sowell says. Sowell contends that there are a number of whites who were enslaved in North Africa by Barbary pirates who were Muslim, and that exceeded the number of Africans enslaved in the United States. and in the American colonies put together. In fact, in this particular article, they note a professor from Ohio State, and he estimates between 1530 and 1780, between 1 million and quite possibly 1.25 million white European Christians were enslaved by Muslims on the Barbary Coast.
Now, I want to go to Miss Bachelorette, whatever her name is, and all the hypocrites at the UN, okay? I want to know if my people were enslaved back then, and I want you to investigate them. And by the way, much of that slavery still occurs to this day. You think that slavery doesn't exist in the world? Do you? Joe just made a good point in the article. It says, why are you tapping the nations that ended slavery? United States spent 600,000 lives. 600,000 American soldiers died in the Civil War. One of the reasons for which was to end slavery, okay? You had the British Empire ended slavery, okay? Why am I paying reparations? First of all, our people weren't even here, so we'll leave that aside. But America's got to pay reparations when there's slavery in the world right now.
What do you
being
think
perpetrated
goes
by
on
Muslims
in the Middle East?
Right. What do you think is
Filipinos and Indians? They go to build, work as nannies. That's modern day slavery.
And what about sex
There's
slavery?
Oh, please.
What about sex slavery in the Middle East, where these Russian girls get abducted? These blonde-haired, blue-eyed Russian girls get abducted and brought there. What's that?
How about in America?
Oh yeah, listen.
There's no question that that's going on. Do you know, this is a true story, my hand up. When I used to travel for work, I used to use the same car service every day, and I would get the same drivers a lot. So like, I got to know them, they got to know me. This one guy, he was a Polish company. This one Polish guy, he said he picked up a girl, young Russian girl, from the Crown Plaza off of 17, like not far from Hasbrook Heights. Mm-hmm. He told me that she was a prostitute, and she was crying. And he was like, I'll take you to whatever, he was like, I'll help you.
Right.
And she was just like, they'll kill you, whatever. Just drop me off. He was like, no. I'll help you. I'll help you.
Right.
She was a sex slave.
Right. Let me tell you, just so
that's in New Jersey, by the way.
Yeah, that's New Jersey, by the way. Now, some of the people would say, well, yeah, but she's making money, or you could hear the
excuse. Oh, my gosh.
I admitted earlier I didn't live like a Catholic man for a while, and let's say strip clubs are places I used to go to, okay? I remember here in New Jersey, okay, when the place closes down and the limousine pulls up, okay, and it's taking at least 10 or 12 of those girls or 15 of those girls, all blonde, blue-haired, or blonde hair, blue-eyed, getting them there and bringing them right back to Brighton Beach, where the Russians are. They're sent there to go and dance all night. You think they're keeping all those singles that idiots like me were throwing at them? All those $5 bills and whatever the case may be, you think they're keeping that money? No, they're going back and they're paying their masters. They probably keep a few bucks. They give them some sort of a semblance of freedom, and they have their own apartment. But at the end of the day, they'll make $1,000, $2,000 a night working at a strip club in New Jersey. They're paying that off to their masters in Brighton Beach. You think that that's not true? That's slavery. Where's the feminist groups when it comes to that? Okay? But let's get back to this slavery. This slavery, in other words, that occurred in so many places in the world. How come when people pointed out, particularly African Americans, African-American intellectuals who have pointed out, no. What do you think? A ragtag bunch of Portuguese just decided one day they were going to sail up the Congo River and they were going to enslave a whole continent? Do you know anything about history? Do you know that the Portuguese couldn't have done that if they didn't have willing partners there in Africa? They are like every other people, just like the indigenous people of America. The Indians were conquering one another, and what did they do when they conquered them? They enslaved them. What did they do in Africa when one tribe conquered another? They enslaved them. And then a lot of these guys that were doing the enslaving, then they met the Portuguese, and they're like, oh, we could capture more, and we could sell them to these idiots, and they'll go sell them overseas. We don't care. Slavery is part of the human condition. Thomas Sowell points out slavery was not controversial. Should have been. Okay, should have been. All right? There shouldn't have been slavery. Every culture, every civilization has been involved in slavery to one degree or another. Everyone. But he makes a good point. I'll give you another good point. I forgot the professor's name who pointed out, by the way, for all you Catholic bashers out there, okay, another place and another time where slavery did not exist. After the fall of the Roman Empire in those so-called Dark Ages, slavery did not exist in Western Europe. And at that point, Western Europe was Catholic.
And also, the Catholic Church declared that if you had a slave 500 years before the Civil War, you were excommunicated.
That's right.
The Catholic Church.
Yeah, you won't hear that from Protestants because they need a club with which to beat up the Catholic Church. You won't hear that from atheists. They'll say that I'm not going to bash him, but even Bishop Robert Barron at one point said, "Yeah, was the church late to the game on slavery?" No, Bishop Barron, listen, I'm not as well read as you, and I'm going to concede that you're probably superior in intelligence than me. But I need to remind you that as early as the early 1400s, that there was a papal bull, I believe it was Pope Eugene IV, who basically condemned slavery under no uncertain terms because I think it was the Portuguese were taking slaves in the Canary Islands, okay? And wind of that got back to Rome. And the Pope said, absolutely not. You will restore them to their liberty. I think he gave them 2 weeks. I think it was something like, you'll do this now. They will be restored to their liberty, and then you will give them back everything that you took from them, okay, for fear of excommunication. That was, I think it was 1430 or 1440, and every 100 years after that, that teaching of the Catholic Church was reiterated. So you can say all you want about church people who called themselves Catholic in Spain and Portugal that were involved in the slave trade, okay? But the church has condemned slavery under no uncertain terms, way before it was acceptable to do so, by the way. As Thomas Sowell points out, it wasn't really controversial. The Catholic Church was controversial in the 1400s. But my thing is this, getting back to the story, Joe, where's my reparations? I want my reparations.
Well, I think Sowell answers that. He basically says, are white Christians today owed reparations? Sowell says this: nobody is going to give North Africans reparations because no one is going to be fool enough to give them a dime.
Right, yeah.
That is the truth.
Go ahead. Go to the places where historically the Muslims enslaved people in North Africa and say, listen, excuse me, Mullah, excuse me, we think you owe us some money. You'll get a knife in your heart, and then you'll get beheaded. That's what they'll do to you if you go and demand reparations. So guess what? Leave the reparations argument alone. Why don't we start treating people like Martin Luther King said by the content of their character, instead of all the lefties that are calling for reparations who seek to divide us along racial lines? How about we talk along those lines about the content of people's characters? Stop teaching critical race theory. Stop trying to divide us along racial lines. How about stop trying to steal money from us? Because we know, Joe, if reparations are paid, who's getting the money? People like Patrice Calors. They're going to go out and buy another multi-million-dollar home. I said this before. I'll say it again. I remember we were playing AC/DC in college. It shows you how I spent my college years. We're playing AC/DC. I remember we were playing. It was a group of us. We're playing AC/DC, and there's almost this one unbeatable hand where an ace comes up. If anybody knows AC/DC, an ace comes up first, and you get to call high or low. And if you call low and an ace comes up, the only card that can beat you in the deck is a third ace comes in the middle.
That's
okay?
impossible.
The odds are staggering, okay? And we're playing, and this pot for a bunch of college kids was big. We crushed Delta Tau Chi, okay, in Animal House. This pot had to be a couple grand, all right? This kid, Anthony, had that hand. He got the ace. He called it low. The other ace come out, was high. The only card that can beat him was the ace. He goes, pot, like a real wise guy. He goes, pot it, I won. The ace comes up. And after like 5 seconds of stunned silence by him and everybody else, he went, I ain't paying. I don't care what you do to me. I ain't paying. I'm taking Anthony's attitude on reparations. I ain't paying. You're not getting a dime from me. That's the bottom line. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossetto. I like going back to my college days.
Well,
I'm ashamed sometimes.
You need a guy from Jersey to say just like that. That's the press conference.
Well, no, seriously.
I ain't paying.
See, if we really wanted a man of the people, all right, like if you had a real man of the people up there, and I'm not talking about somebody who talks like Josh Hawley, and we love Josh Hawley.
Don't you love when they what's it called? You ever see like when Pete Buttigieg, they always like roll up their sleeves, the Obama, like they're like working people. Don't you love that?
In the meantime, these are guys never worked a day.
Oh my God, I crack up when I see
Obama,
that. It was just like, let me take my tie off.
Yeah, Obama never saw a box that had to go in his house that didn't even look at somebody and say, could you take that in my house? How about you roll up your sleeves and pick it up? But we need a real man of the people to look at Joy Reid. I pick on her because she's a racist. And Ibram Kendi and the rest of them out there. And just look at them very simply and say, here's the thing. I'm not giving you an argument against reparations. I'm very simply stating like my friend Anthony in college, I ain't paying. That's it. I ain't paying. Next story, Joe Resinello.
Love it. We're going to talk woke sports because this is good. And I love it. But then we're going to go, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball, but then we're going to talk about the NFL. And frankly, it's still disappointing, the NFL, on a number of fronts, not just because of the story we're going to talk about with the black national anthem, which I just don't understand. I simply don't. There's one national anthem for America, for white and black people. I don't think I'm off base by saying that. But we'll start off with the Major League Baseball story, talking specifically about the All-Star Game. It turned out to be the second lowest rated game of all time after playing on the heels of the league's controversial decision to move the game from Atlanta due to Georgia's election integrity law. The decision proved so unpopular that even to be honest with you, a plurality of black voters said moving the game from Georgia's voting law because of Georgia's voting laws was a bad idea. To show how far the All-Star Game has fallen,
This is staggering.
In 1980, the broadcast earned 36 million viewers. By 2015, only 11 million. And basically, in this year, it was only 8.24 million. It went down
reap what
from
you sow.
Absolutely. You go basically bottom line, go woke, go broke, and they get it. You see, this is how you change the policy. I just had a conversation with an old friend of mine last night. I'm telling you, this is what you have to do. Stop drinking Coca-Cola. Don't go to Starbucks. All these companies that basically made these broad statements, if you can, I get it. I mean, obviously, sometimes you're in a bind. You can't go any other way. I get it. We all have to function. We live in a world. I get it. But if you can, is all I'm saying, don't use them. Use the alternative. And if you do that, I'm telling you, you will change the narrative on the corporate front.
Joe makes a very good point. Some things are harder.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean we're not supposed to try to do them.
But if you can't, what are you going to do?
Some things you can end tomorrow. Some things are going to take a little bit of research. If you're doing business with a bank that's woke, they might hide it from you. You might not hear it so much, so you might not be aware of it, okay? In fact, I'll tell you a story real quick. I found TD Bank. My wife and I, when we got married, we were living in Brooklyn, okay? And I found TD Bank because Wells Fargo, I knew, was woke, all right? And I called up a Catholic mutual fund company out in the Midwest, okay? Because I had heard about them in my during one time when I was watching Raymond Arroyo's show, and he had on the CEO. And I was like, well, let me call them because they only invest in companies that don't contradict Catholic teaching, okay? So they won't invest in a company that does medical devices that are going to be used in abortion or pharmaceutical companies that make contraceptives. They don't do it, okay? So I called them up, and they told me, well, TD Bank is a company that we invest in, okay, as a bank. I'm like, well, good. That probably means that they're not woke. All right. And I did do business with TD Bank. I'm now looking for another bank because TD Bank has to go out of their way to put a rainbow flag in the window. What that has to do with banking, I don't know. How if I'm against gay marriage, I don't know how that harms a homosexual who's doing business with TD Bank. I have no idea. Okay. How I'm adversely affecting society because I think that marriage is between one man and one woman. No clue. But that takes a little time. I have to find a good bank. All right. And some that I'm going to be with, so a bank I'm going to be with for a long time. And that might involve a little bit more time and effort. Canceling HBO does not take any effort, guys. Canceling Netflix does not take any effort, okay? Not buying Coca-Cola products. Just go on Coca-Cola's website. You'll see the products. If they also make Poland Spring, don't buy Poland Spring. If they make Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite, and all these different ones, don't buy it. Okay? And if Pepsi's doing the same thing, guess what? My favorite soda growing up was RC Cola. I don't think they went woke yet, and I still think you could buy RC Cola. My point is, okay, that there are easy things we could do. Why are we not at least doing the easy things? You know, Joe, when I work, sometimes I got a pile of work in front of me. I always get done with the easy stuff first. Because the harder stuff is going to take a little bit more time, and I don't want to get bogged down. My view is, well, get the easy stuff done first. That'll take me probably a half hour.
Build some momentum.
Boom, 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 boom. Then go into the hard stuff. Well, we need to do the same thing with how we're stewards of our money. Would you agree, Joe Resinello?
There's no question. And by the way, that's what drives corporate America is money. The principles. When they pretend they have principles, I laugh. Listen, I've worked in corporate America for 23 years. I've worked in banking. I laugh
Money
drives the business.
Let's take a break. We're going to come back. We got one more segment on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room's open, crusadechannel.com/chat. And remember that you could hit listen free at crusadechannel.com. And we're convinced that if you do and you hear the whole lineup, okay, you're going to want to become a subscriber, as Joe and I are subscribers to the Crusade channel. So we would encourage you to do so. Stick around. We got one more segment left. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. Joe, before we move on, because I know you're going to talk about also another sports story in all this wokeness, but here's what I heard. I don't know how true it is. This is what I heard. As the All-Star game ramped up, the Republican Party launched an ad campaign taking Major League Baseball to task for harming Atlanta's black-owned businesses. Now, why did I get charged, Joe Resinello, when I heard that? See, Republicans, how you could get through to them sometimes. Turn the tables of racism against them. You hurt black-owned businesses in Atlanta by moving that game. And you moved it to Lily White, Denver, Colorado. Is that where they moved it? Did they move it to Denver? I think they moved it to Denver. So you took money out of the pockets. Well, I didn't watch it. You took money. Last time I watched the All-Star game, Fred Lynn for the Boston Red Sox hit a home run. That shows you how long the last time I watched. Fred Lynn used to make the All-Star game, All-Stars all the time. Fred Lynn knocked one right into the right field, over the right field fence. But my point is that I won't watch the game anyway, but at least the Republicans were smart enough to turn the tables on them. You cost black Americans money that they would have made with the All-Star game being in Atlanta, and you shipped it off to Lily White, Denver, Colorado. Shame on you, MLB. Good for them for doing that.
Well, let's talk the NFL, since we're talking about woke sports, because they're off the hook.
By the way, I'm very disappointed in the story. I really didn't hear a lot going on in the NFL, and I thought maybe I could go back to watching the Jets. If this is what they're going to do, it's another season for Joe Pasillo without the New York Jets.
Basically, in a nutshell, they're going to play what they classify as the Black National Anthem at major events. Now, the front office of the NFL added that this has potentially cost them some money and ratings. But this is what shocked me. The dip wasn't really that significant. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. At the height of the player protests, this is 2016-2017 seasons, the league's office basically plummeted 8 to 10% respectively.
When you talk about their audience.
Yes, correct. The ratings.
Yeah.
So 2016-2017, it dropped 8 to 10%. As the protests receded, the NFL's TV audience bounced back to grow by 5% in the 2018 to 2019 season. But average audiences fell 8% to 15.1 million viewers in 2020 as the league embraced social justice messaging on helmets, warm-up gear, and fields and stadiums, putting all types of messages. 8%? I'll be honest with you, I'm ashamed. I mean, listen, everyone likes things, and I said this recently in a discussion with an old friend of mine. They slap you across the face and we reward them by making them rich. You're not going to honor America by the national anthem? Listen, I am all for people expressing their views. All for it. I express mine, you have a right to express yours, even if I don't agree with it. But here's the deal. In that forum, it's not appropriate because it's not your time. Just like on my job's time, I don't have a right to wave my Catholic flag or talk about politics and proselytize. You know why? Because it's not my time. And here's another thing. You don't even know your clients. Who are your clients? Your audience. They don't want to hear that. They simply don't. But here's the disappointing thing. Just dropping 8% after smacking you in the face like they just did.
Should be down 50%.
It should be down 100%.
Right.
And it would change in a minute.
And here's the thing. There is no black national anthem. I don't like America right now. I don't like America because we kill babies. We're one of 7 countries in the world that kills babies up until the moment of birth. We're right in there with China and North Korea. Great.
And like Iran.
Yeah, a great company to be in, okay? So I don't like the path that America's going. We're here because we don't like the path America's going down. There is one national anthem.
For everybody.
That's it, okay? So you can point out all the things you don't like. Well, I can point out all the things that I don't like too. How about I don't like the black liberal establishment calling me a racist?
Because I'm white.
So if just because I'm white, or teaching my kids that they're supposed to hate themselves because of the color of their skin. And if that's what's represented by the black national anthem, I'm taking a knee. Now, what are you going to do when somebody doesn't agree with the idea that there's a black national anthem and takes a knee like Colin Kaepernick did?
Who says that it's a black...
Well, that's the name of this. That's the name of the song. Lift every voice and sing. But you're not saying lift every voice and sing. You're saying lift every black voice and sing. You're not unifying people. You're dividing them. Anybody in America could find a problem with America. All right? You're not special because you have a grievance. Nobody's special. Everybody's got a grievance with America. If you want to find one,
it's Festivus.
What's that?
Festivus.
What's that?
It's the first day of Festivus. Air your grievances, Mr. Costanza.
You
never saw Festivus on Seinfeld?
Yeah, I know.
Oh my!
You're bringing up episodes I never saw.
Dude, that is fantastic.
But air your grievances, okay? But the fact is, there's one national anthem. Like I said before, you're not special. There's nothing special about the persecution you went through. Nothing. Okay, slavery, we just covered a story. White Christians are owed reparations too by people of color in Africa and the Middle East. If you want to really get down to the nitty gritty, you need to put down the blame game. All right, all you race hucksters out there. I'm not talking about conservative or moderate African Americans. They're not into all this nonsense. I'm talking about the left. I'm talking about the Joy Reids of the world. I'm talking about people like that. I'm talking about Ibram Kendi. Okay? No, you're not going to call everybody racist and get away with it, and you're not going to force me to stand up when the so-called black national anthem is playing. I can't wait till one of those players takes a knee or turns their back or stays in the locker room when that's playing. I can't wait till the NFL's confronted with a player who says, I don't believe in 2 national anthems. I believe in one. I'll be out for the American national anthem, but I'm going to stay in the locker room for this so-called black national anthem. I can't wait to see how the NFL and Roger Goodell are going to react to that.
Well, it'll depend on who it is. You see, if it's somebody who's huge, then they have a problem. But if it's just, say, your average guy, then they'll penalize him and punish him. But if it's someone that's huge, like huge.
Well, you know what it is too. Shame on. I'm sorry.
That's the way it works.
Shame on some of these black players. Okay, especially in football. Okay, you broke your butt to get where you are. Okay, the liberals didn't make you into a star cornerback or a star running back. You're the one who sacrificed. You're the one who didn't go out and party. You're the one who stayed in the gym. You're the one who went to the games on Saturday and played the games. Okay, when you were in high school and then in college. You sacrificed to be where you are. Okay. Why are you letting the race hucksters make it seem like you're supposed to hate America? You've made it. Did anybody hold you back? Did a couple of white guys, so we're called white guys, at least according to the left, did we hold you back? Or do we put the money in your pocket because we appreciate how you play the game of football?
And also, if you want to do something, to be honest with you, again, it's not your time. You work for somebody. You see, this is what I just don't understand, why we let them, as in paying customers, where they're customers. I sometimes remind doctors about that, because doctors sometimes treat their patients like you're basically like that they're above like you. And sometimes they like talk to you almost like, I sometimes remind them, you do realize I'm your client. Like, I put it in business terms. Like, you don't treat like just cancel an appointment. You just do this. Like, guess what? My time is valuable too.
Right.
I'm your client. That's how you make money. Me. And this is what they don't get, but at the same time, we don't punish them for it. And what do I mean by punish them for it? Turn the television off.
And that, by the way,
don't buy jerseys.
That's an easy one.
I'm telling you, and it will change. Believe me, if Roger Goodell's profits are down by 80%, he's fired, he's replaced, all these policies change.
Right.
It's a fact. Yet they slap us across the face and we reward them by making them rich. So who's the fool?
I will remind all the people listening to us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. The only thing we could think about, because these are business people, they're interested in money and power, okay? The only rationale, because no business wants to get a shave of 8%. Let alone what could turn into 20 or 30 or 40%.
Oh, dude, the NFL.
Okay, the NFL. Crushed. Right there. So, but the thing is, the only thing we could think of with these woke corporations today is that they really do believe there is going to be a new global order, and they're just trying to position themselves to be in the best possible spot when that happens. So they'll sacrifice short-term profits for what they perceive to be a longer-term benefit in this new order. That's the only thing we could see, because if they really were capitalists, if they really were free marketeers, okay, whose concern is their bottom line and growing their bottom line, well, don't piss off half your audience. It just doesn't make business sense. Listen, don't cheese off 5% of your audience. If I sell steaks for a living, I want everybody and their mother to come and buy my steaks and cream spinach and baked potato, okay, and drink some red wine and drink some brown liquor, all right? Honestly, I mean, even the church was, I'm not discriminating against anybody. If you're gay and you come in my restaurant, I'm going to feed you. I'm not going to give you a private room for a gay wedding, but I'm going to feed you, okay? I don't really care what your politics are when you come into my restaurant. I don't care, okay? Because in that case, I'm a businessman. I provide a service to all people, and it would be unjust discrimination to discriminate against anybody. I have no reason to, all right? But because that's a good way of looking at business. I want people to buy my steaks,
but
to
it's
eat
also,
my steaks. But it makes perfect business. Why would you cheese off people?
Well, to be honest with you, you're right. And in business, there's no place for it. They're there to make money. You go into business to make money. And I don't care what your views are. Listen, how many people I work with, I don't even like. But I work with them at work. I have to work. You're in the world. I mean, we're not in heaven. You work. That's one thing you got to learn in life. You work with all types of people in life. You live with all types of people in your neighborhoods. You got to know how to function. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is life. But here's the thing, to Joe's point, it's a business. This is not your time. Like, I choose on my time to be who I want to be with. But on my works, that time, it's not my time. That's my point. And they have every right to say to Colin Kaepernick, listen, guy, you're on my clock. I pay you. I don't care what color you are. Stop it.
And you didn't make it because you're not a good quarterback, not because of racism. There's your bottom line, too. So, Joe, we only have about a few minutes left. What do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about basically this whole deal with them flagging problematic posts on Facebook. I mean, it's funny. Psaki came out. The story we're covering, basically, Avita Duffy of the Federalist was talking about her boss, who's Ben Domenech, who's basically the.
I still say that. You say that
like
it's not pronounced as Domenech, but at Joe and Joe, his name is Ben Domenech.
I mean, that's like someone. We're Italianizing.
We're Italianizing, but I bet you I bet you he's Italian. I bet you his name's Italian. It just got augmented a little bit at some point.
But anyway, I mean, basically, he was talking about how Psaki recently says we're going to flag problematic posts on Facebook that spread disinformation. Again, says who? Who says it's disinformation? You, Psaki? Please, I'll circle back to you. But here's the thing. Obviously, too, Facebook owns WhatsApp.
WhatsApp, yeah.
Which is also something that a lot of people use, and they for personal, discussions, and they can now potentially flag that as well. And we talked about freedom. The beginning of the show, we were talking about Cuba, how people are waving the American flag. Yet in America, we're burning it. And we're giving freedom away. First they censored Donald Trump. To this day, I don't know how they got away with that in this country.
Well, he's suing them.
Well, and he should.
He should. And he's going to win.
And even if they say, well, it's my company and I don't want him on the platform, then they should take away their safeguards.
That's right. Because see, there is again, Joe Marcel, there is a consequence. Trump knows what he's doing. If he rattles the cage enough, okay, and they turn around like you said, and they're going to make the argument, well, it's our company, right? But you came public then under false pretenses. You said you were an open platform. You get Section 230 protections. You get all these other protections because you're not a newspaper. You're not a cable TV news network. You're an open platform. And if you don't act that way, okay, it's your company. But guess what? Now you have the federal government coming after you. That's why Trump's lawsuit's important.
But this is what I'm saying. We allowed them to get away with it. And here's the deal. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, listen, he has every right to say what he wants to say. They say, no. He's inciting violence. Actually, to be honest with you, the root of why they did it, they don't want him to be the president again. And it scares the hell out of them that they think he may. Why do you think they tried to basically, what the heck was it, that ridiculous, after he was even gone, they tried to impeach the man. He wasn't even in the chair anymore.
Right.
That was so he can't run again. You have it, like, I mean.
And why? Wait, but Joe, see, this is the thing. This is where you have to just look, and I know you do. You got to look a little bit deeper. Why don't they want him to run again? 2 reasons. First of which, there's rhino Republicans even that are stepping up in the states, and they're saying, well, if there was anything wrong with the last election, there ain't going to be moving forward. Supreme Court's already backed them up on ballot harvesting, okay? Third-party ballot harvesting,
IDs.
okay? You're going to do voter IDs. These states are strengthening their voter integrity laws. So the left does it. They're deathly afraid of Donald Trump for that reason, and because of that, the real reason they're afraid of him, they know he can win.
Of course.
They know he can, and they know that Ohio's gone for them. We mentioned earlier, Florida's gone, okay? In other words, and they know full well that those blue-collar people in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin all voted for Donald Trump. They all went for Donald Trump in record numbers. And Arizona. Not going to discount that either, okay? So whatever happened. Joe Biden, they tell us, okay, you're not going to get an argument from Joe and I. We're going to keep making our argument here. They're afraid of election integrity. And they know Donald Trump could win. That's why they tried to impeach him, like you said, for the 3rd time. That's why they took him off of Facebook and everything else. Guess what? The law of unintended consequences, Mr. Dorsey. Mutant. You know, we haven't called him a mutant in a long time. Joe Arsenello calls you a mutant, Mr. Dorsey, because that's what you are. You and Zuckerberg and the rest of you. Okay?
He recently, trimmed the beard.
Because you know why? He must have heard the Frontline with Joe and Joe. He looked in the mirror and said, that Goomba from New Jersey, he's right. I look like a mutant. I should trim
He's
my
like
beard.
A secular monk, that dude. He fasts, no, but I'm just saying.
Listen,
if
I'm going to sacrifice anything in my life, it will be to the one true God, second person of the Blessed Trinity, Jesus Christ, and Father and Holy Spirit. Okay, I'm not sacrificing a damn thing to Gaia, the Earth Goddess. Just not happening.
Those cats.
Okay, if I got a choice between a Tesla and a Cadillac, all other things being equal, I'm probably going to buy the Cadillac. Okay, so just so you know, I'm not sacrificing to the Earth Mother. Just again, but here's my point: is that they're deathly afraid of that. Okay, and that's why. And the other thing too, I mentioned the law of unintended consequences, Mr. Dorsey and Mr. Zuckerberg. Rumble's coming on strong, pal. All right, so is Gab, and so are the others. And you know what? Just like Zuckerberg, just like Facebook overtook MySpace, because little by little people said, well, I'm on MySpace. I said, well, you should go to Facebook. And told, well, I'm on MySpace, so you should go to Facebook. Same thing's going to happen to you, Mr. Zuckerberg. And I don't need to tell you what happened to MySpace, okay? They got bought for $1 billion, and then they basically went out of existence. So the bottom line is this. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Go ahead. Because you're just making us stronger.
No, but getting back to the whole idea of how we're just giving our freedoms away. I mean, it's so sad. Like we said, we started our show again. Cuba, they're fighting in the streets to basically be free. And here we are, we're just letting them get away with murder. Like I said, I can't believe what has taken place over the last 2 years in this country. Listen, again, you don't have to like Donald Trump to fight for his right to speak. Listen, they could do it to you. Don't you realize that? You see, this is what people lose focus on. It could be turned on you in a minute. In a minute. Just like COVID was like a freak event that basically was the biggest power grab we've ever seen.
Klaus Schwab said so.
But my point is, there could be an unforeseen event that could turn it on you. Would you want that to happen?
Joe,
that America?
Joe, they never care. They never. One thing I will say about Democrats, and it's to their credit, when they see the handwriting on the wall and they know something that they're about to push is a loser, they don't care. They will push it through in the hope that the Republicans won't have the stones to overturn it. I'll give you a perfect example. Or anybody who thinks I'm talking out of my you-know-what, Obamacare is a perfect example. 70% of the American people were against Obamacare. They went ahead and did it anyway. They knew they were going to lose the midterms. They got crushed in the midterms in 2010. Crushed. That's when the Tea Party came in. They know that their positions are losers, but when they get the chance, they'll do it. And then they'll deal with the consequences down the road. They went into the wilderness too. And again, you could do this. One big thing, you could do this when you have a willing press. Back then, you didn't have big tech as powerful in 2010. Now you got the press and big tech. They're more, but Joe, they'll do the most unpopular thing and they don't care. They'll bank on two things. They have the media and the corporations on their side and Republican fecklessness. That's what they bank on. And you want to know what? We're still stuck with Obamacare. 8 years later, or however many years later now, a decade later, we're still stuck with that law for those two reasons.
Well, I blame the American people to a degree too. That's why, to be truthful with you, you got to turn the TV off and start doing your own research. You got to look into things a little bit. Too many people just don't. You got to look at some alternative sources like the Crusade Channel, like the Epoch Times. Read different opinions, views. Listen, at the end of the day, if you're misinformed, it's your own fault. And frankly, I think most people out there, they're brainwashed, Joe. They're simply brainwashed. The narrative that's being spewed at them, and I use the word spewed because that's just what it is, and they eat it up. They eat it actually, to be honest with you, when you actually have a conversation with some of those folks, it frightens me how they eat it up.
Yeah.
They simply do, and it's sad.
Let's make a mention this way, because we only have about a minute left, but we wanted to make a mention. We're obviously not going to have time to get into it so much. Whenever you hear the left talk about democracy, they hate democracy. They proved that with Donald Trump, okay? And they proved it again. Well, they proved it in Wisconsin when Scott Walker had the power and the votes in the State House to pass collective bargaining reform and take away the power of the unions. And what did the Democrats do? They fled the state. When it came time to exercise their power that they were given by the people of their own district in that state, they fled the state because they knew they were going to lose the vote. See, now that's not respecting democracy. That's saying that we don't care about democracy, and they just did the same thing in Texas.
Well, you got to vote those people out.
And I blame the people. If they didn't vote
That's
and they
right.
didn't represent you in that state house,
You vote them out.
And even if they're against voter ID and all that kind of stuff, then go and vote. They left and they were applauded. And then I have to hear that people like Joe and I are a threat to our democracy, that Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy, when these MFing Democrats in Texas didn't have the stones to go and represent their people in the State House and vote on legislation in the Texas State House. And then we don't like democracy? We've been taking crap from you through the democratic process for years. Now that you get a little bit of a leg up in a place like Texas, and they can actually do something about their voter integrity laws, you flee the state and you go maskless on the plane while you're smiling, while you're telling everybody else to wear a mask?
You arrest them when they return.
That's what he said, and that's what I think one person did
You
get arrested.
arrest them when they return, you arrest them.
Governor Abbott said we're going to arrest them when they come back. Now, I haven't followed the story in the last couple days, okay? So I'm going to look more into it. But the bottom line is this. He made the right statement. You come back, you're getting arrested. That is whatever you want to arrest them under. Dereliction of duty. You abandon your job. You didn't do what you were supposed to.
Right.
I don't care what it is. You have a responsibility to go and cast the vote. However you want to cast that vote, you have a responsibility to do so, and you fled the state. You care nothing about the democracy. I will never let a leftist preach to Joe or I or anybody else that they care about democracy, because they do not, and they just proved it in Texas. Joe, any final thoughts?
It's a sick world out there,
and it's getting sicker. God bless Bob Grant, and God rest his soul. And thank you for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, always very pleased and honored to be on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the chat room will remain open at crusadechannel.com/chat. Go on the website, crusadechannel.com, and hit listen free and become a subscriber. We know you're going to want to be when you hear hear the whole lineup. And please, if you want to contribute to Joe and my success moving forward financially, you could drop a couple bucks in at patreon.com/The Frontline with Joe and Joe. And until next week, remember that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.